Hey there, my wedding planning friends, and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time visiting, thanks so much for clicking on this video. If you like what you see, please like and subscribe to get weekly videos on wedding tips and advice. So today we're going to talk about the things that couples find the most surprising when they're planning their wedding. So I took a poll on Instagram of my followers asking what people's experience was with their own wedding planning and what they found the most surprising. If you don't follow me on Instagram, be sure to do that so you can participate in these polls that I do in the future for future videos at emilysummerstudios. So I compiled all of the responses that I got on my Instagram and also added a few of my own to come up with the top 5 things that people find surprising when they're planning their wedding. So the first thing is how quickly vendors book out. If you haven't been following the wedding industry, or if you don't have a lot of friends that have gotten married and so you're not really sure how the process goes, then you probably aren't aware that wedding vendors book out, depending on the vendor and depending on the area, about 9 months to a year in advance. And this is especially true for venues. This is going to be probably your vendor that books out the furthest in advance. I know here in Montana there's a lot of vendors or venues that are booking all the way into 2021, and it's not even 2020 yet. So keep that in mind, that when you're going to search for your venue, definitely have a few different dates in mind, because if you're within that year mark, if your wedding date is sooner than 12 months out, then there's a good chance that the venue that you have your eye on might already be booked. So when you're doing your venue hunting, definitely have a few different dates in mind in case your top choice is already booked out. A lot of other vendors book out pretty far in advance too. Photographers are booking out probably 9 months to a year in advance. Myself, I book typically a year in advance, sometimes more. If it's just a day of coordinating gig, then sometimes I can squeeze those in within that 1 year mark if I still have the date available, but typically 9 months to a year is standard for most wedding planners and coordinators. So just make sure you're getting a jump on your wedding planning so that you're not surprised by these timelines. Another thing that surprised couples was postage, both the cost of postage and how much you'll need. I think this is something that people kind of forget about, but if you're sending out save the dates and sending out invitations, I mean, there's a cost for not only the stationery that you'll be using, but also you've got to get postage to send out all those invites and those save the dates. So definitely remember to budget that into your overall budget when you're planning for your printed items and your stationery, because you're going to have to pay for every single individual stamp that you're going to send out to all of your guests. So if you're sending 300 invitations and postage is at 55 cents per post, that's a good chunk of money that you're going to need a budget for. So keep that in mind so that doesn't surprise you. On the topic of prices, I think this as a blanket statement was probably the thing that most people found surprising, is the cost of certain items that they weren't really expecting or had no idea things would cost that much. I think prices as a whole is surprising to people when it comes to wedding planning, but perhaps the most surprising items when it comes to cost are the food and florals and those little accessories that add up. So your food, you have to remember, is directly correlated to the number of guests that you're going to invite to your wedding. So when you're thinking about your wedding day and you're wanting 300 people there because they're all your closest friends and family, and you want to be surrounded by this big group of people, that's great. But you may not be thinking about the fact that if you invite 300 people, you got to pay for dinner for 300 people. You've got to pay chairs and linens and tables and silverware and napkins for 300 people. So just keep that in mind when you're initially even starting to draft your guest list, that if you are wanting to have a larger wedding with a higher guest count, there's a lot of costs that are going to be directly affected by this number. Obviously, your food is the big thing for that. There's a lot of variety when it comes to caterers, and I feel like at least around here you get what you pay for. So caterers, yes, tend to be pretty pricey, but a common thing that I saw in these responses when people were saying, yes, I had no idea how expensive catering was, but it was worth it. So that's what I love to see is, you're spending a lot of money on something, but there's a reason that you're going to spend that money. So if you're having a caterer that's going to serve your guests and have a fully plated meal, obviously that's going to cost a lot more money than just having a buffet, because you're going to be paying for more servers, more labor hours, and they're going to stay and clean up for you and clear your plates and make that really seamless for you during your dinner hour. So that's really what you're paying for. The other cost that a lot of people found surprising was the cost of florals. And this is where I feel like Pinterest is a double-edged sword, because there are so many beautiful photos on Pinterest that are used for inspiration when it comes to flowers, like your bridal bouquet and your bridesmaids bouquets, and probably some centerpiece ideas. However, if you're not super knowledgeable on florals, then you probably have no idea how much the cost of those flowers are that you're pinning, that you're potentially going to bring to your florist for a floral consult. Things to keep in mind when it comes to flowers, which is what really drives the cost up, is florals that are in season versus out of season or in your region. So if you see a photo on Pinterest or anywhere out there that's your inspiration photo for your bridal bouquet, and you take that to a florist, but you have no idea, you know, what the specific flowers are that are in there that are really drawing your attention, or where they come from, or if they're in season, then bringing that to a florist and saying that's what you want could hit you with a really surprising bill. So make sure that you're doing a little bit of research on florals, and don't be afraid to talk to your florist about your budget and maybe show them a picture and point out exactly what you like about that picture, whether it's the specific flowers that are making up the bouquet, or maybe it's just the color, and working with them to find something that's similar, that's going to be more cost efficient. On the topic of florals, I think a lot of my clients are surprised too, where garland is something that is really popular, especially on, you know, long banquet style tables. I think it looks beautiful, and a lot of clients initially think that going the garland route is going to be more cost efficient because it's just greenery, right? There's no big beautiful flowers, you're not paying for these huge arrangements to go for centerpieces. But the thing to keep in mind with garland is they are physically created by a florist. So you're paying for the labor to create that garland so that it all stays in one long strand. So while it might seem like garland is a really cheap option, keep in mind how many tables you plan to have garland cover, because florists will charge their labor hours typically by the foot. So keep that in mind if you're going the garland route, so that you're not surprised by that charge as well. Third, all those little accessories that you have to get definitely add up. And I think a lot of people don't really think about these things until towards the end of their planning. And when I say little accessories, I mean the things like your wedding shoes, your earrings, your necklace, maybe a hairpiece you're gonna wear, your cufflinks for your groom, that sort of thing, where those are typically items that you get towards the end because you need to make sure you have your wedding dress, you've got your tux, you know, your colors, and you may be finding these little details to kind of fit in and really polish the look. So even though these are things you're going to do towards the end of planning, make sure that you put them in your budget in the beginning, so that when you get to that point where you're buying all these little accessories after spending thousands of dollars on other wedding items, that you're not going to be surprised by these costs. Number 4, you guys, I can't even believe how many people responded with just absolute horror stories of their wedding and vendors that they worked with, and how they got completely blindsided by their vendor, or they just straight didn't show up, or they didn't provide what they, you know, what they were expecting or what they promised. So they were just surprised by the importance of a vendor contract. I can't stress this enough. Make sure that you have a contract for every single vendor that you're working with for your wedding. This includes your venue, your photographer, your caterer, if you have a photo booth, hair and makeup, and everyone in between. Because the last thing you want to be dealing with on your wedding day is trying to track down a vendor that isn't on time because you didn't have their schedule laid out in a signed contract, or that they're not delivering exactly what they promised to you when you met face to face. Make sure that there is a typed out written contract that you sign prior to your wedding day, so that you know exactly what to expect. And also, God forbid something goes wrong on your wedding day, you've got the proof to back it up that they promised they would deliver something that they didn't. Make sure that you're reading the contracts that vendors send you, and you're not just skimming them and signing them. You want to make sure that within there, they're discussing what their backup plan might be. You want to make sure that your vendors have a backup plan that is communicated with you. This goes for pretty much any vendor you're going to have. Things go wrong, and it's likely that something's going to go wrong on your wedding day, and hopefully it's just something minuscule and not something like your photographer completely doesn't show up or doesn't have a backup plan in place in case they can't make it on your wedding day. I had a woman tell me a story about her wedding in Australia, and her wedding colors included navy, and when she met with her florist, you know, this was discussed, this was the colors that was going to be included, and then a few days leading to her wedding, she's told that that color doesn't exist. There are no flowers that are going to incorporate her wedding color, and there's no possibility that they can. This is something that, yes, it does happen when maybe the color that you want or the flower that you want isn't in season. Sometimes we can't predict that, especially in a place like Montana, where our spring sometimes doesn't happen until the middle of June. But these are things where you need to have a backup plan and make sure that that is established with your vendors so that if something like that does happen, they can step in, grab dried flowers, they can get colored flowers, they can find anything that is going to deliver what they promised. And then you're not having to deal with the stress of this on your wedding day. So overall, just make sure that you have contracts for all of your wedding vendors so that you're not surprised by anything on your wedding weekend. The fifth thing that it seemed a lot of people were really surprised about was the overall size of the wedding industry. It has gotten huge, and I think this applies for pretty much every region. I know here in Montana, it's not a very big state, but the wedding industry is huge because a lot of people come here from other states and have destination weddings because of our beautiful mountain views, and it's also probably a lot less expensive than a lot of places for what you get. Just because there's a lot of options doesn't mean they're good options. So make sure that you're doing your research when you're searching for all of your vendors for your wedding, and look up reviews because reviews are huge. And if you have friends that have gotten married, ask them for references, ask them who they've worked with. You can also ask other vendors that you have already booked who they recommend for different aspects of your wedding, because chances are they're gonna know the ones that are really great to work with, and they're probably gonna know the ones that aren't so great to work with. So those are the top 5 things that I discovered most couples found the most surprising when planning their wedding. So hopefully this makes you a little bit more informed so that you aren't surprised by these items when you're planning your own wedding. If there's something that I didn't mention that you think was super surprising when you planned your wedding, please comment below and let me know. Or if you agree with these top 5 things, let me know about your experience. I'd love to hear. Thanks for watching this video. Hopefully you found it helpful. Please like and subscribe for more weekly wedding planning videos, and we'll see you next week.